Welcome to this beginner's step-by-step watercolor tutorial. Today I will be guiding you through painting a misty river. To follow along, you will need some watercolor paper. I would suggest 300-pound Arches rough. Some brushes, I would suggest 5 in total, a number 20 mop, a number 4, a number 2, a number 12 rounded, and a half-size flat brush. Watercolor paints, I would suggest Winsor & Newton Artist Quality, Winsor Yellow, Alizarin Crimson, and Cobalt Turquoise. Paint your first watercolor, Misty River. At first, I've started with one of the smaller brushes that I mentioned for materials, and I'm just painting a clear wash of water around the pencil painting of the blue heron. Then when that's done, we start at the top of the painting with some Winsor yellow, very light in color, intensity, and we drop some at the bottom as well. Then we go into a reddish color, which is a mixture of the yellow and the red color of your choice, but for me it was alizarin crimson. Using a mop type brush at the moment for these large washes. And then as we come to an area of more accuracy and detail, I go to a smaller brush, as you can see. All of these are mentioned in the descriptions for materials. So clear water is being laid down at the horizon, just above the horizon, and then into the river area where it meets the horizon. And we come across with the blue wash, and as you know from the materials description, that's cobalt turquoise. And when we want some darker cloud areas, we mix a little bit of the red, the alizarin crimson, with the cobalt turquoise. And that alizarin crimson is really intense. So you need a tiny amount on the tip of the brush to mix in with the blue color in your palette. I suggest a well shape for your palette. And do remember that you can visit billholcombart.etsy.com, where you can see lots of my paintings and you can order prints of them. Now, as far as that misty distance is concerned, above the horizon level, we're dropping in some green and then some yellow for the bank. And it's very light on purpose so that it just fuses in, it's not stark, and it gives that misty feel. And we're still dealing with wet in wet, so we're dropping in some light green color for the various trees, and we will later be putting in the trunks, various limbs and so forth of the trees, um, and that will be mixing our usual colors to achieve those. So a very small brush because we need detail here, and we do not want too much liquid on the brush at this stage, because it would just, we would lose control if it was loaded with too much. So the smaller brush helps that situation as well. And then you can use a reddish color, brownish. You can mix the blue and the alizarin crimson together, and you can then get your color for the trees, the trunks and the limbs and so forth. And here and there, where there are gaps in the foliage, you know, we've laid down a few branches and so forth, limbs. Still wet and dropping in a darker color. Also not too intense because we want that misty effect for this particular painting. On other occasions it will be much more intense because we're not on those aiming for a misty painting, but today here we are. And I really hope that these tutorials help you make rapid progress because I know when I started doing transparent watercolors over 40 years ago, if I had videos like this available to me, I would have made much more rapid progress. So I really hope that they help you and that you will like and subscribe, because if you do so, you'll be notified every single time I post another tutorial or a short of a video. Other videos just concentrate on a few tips of achieving different things in watercolor painting, etc., and you'll be notified of them. Now we've gone to the flat brush because we want that particular shape for the reflections, and we want some more accuracy. So the flat brush helps on this occasion, just a half size, something like that. Now the paper has dried much more, and you can speed up the process with a hairdryer as usual, and you see that the pigment, the hue, is much lighter as it dries. So we're using the side scraping brush technique to lay in some of the foliage on top of the underpainting, the lighter colours. And then this gives a nice variation, and it looks as though light is shining through some of the foliage here and there. We've got a mixture of lighter and darker. And then we can strengthen different parts, bearing in mind that the sun is going to be slightly to the left of the painting. We'll deal with that later. And therefore the right side will be darker compared to the left side of these tree trunks and limbs, etc. And when you lay these in, remember that you've got little gaps here and there where you've put the limbs and so forth, and that's much more convincing. Just strengthening up some of the far bank, but also leaving the light area where it meets the water. And then you can use a malleable eraser to take off some of the pencil marks that you don't need anymore. Both at the horizon level and perhaps here and there you might have some where the trees are that you didn't need. And now I'm lifting a little with the flat brush, putting some clear water on the brush, laying it onto the paper, making sure at first that at this part of the process the paper is totally dry, because if you do it whilst it's still a little bit damp, wet, then you're going to cause all sorts of problems with hard edges and creep marks and so forth. So when you do this part, make sure the paper is totally dry and use your hairdryer if necessary to speed up the process. And see this hard edge area where we got some of the green reflection in the water? Look, I'm running that clear water over the hard edge and then using the tissue to lift. Now it's all nicely fused in together. The turtles on the log is just quite simple and easy to do, but I think it adds a little bit of interest to the painting rather than just having the blue heron there, which we'll be tackling much more towards the end. So mix your various colours to do the turtles on the log, and start with light as usual and then darken as you go along. And see at the bottom of the log here as it meets the water, we're going to make that much darker, and by doing it in this way you have a much more convincing final result. Now we're back to the flat brush for control and also shape. We want the nearby bank, which has got various grasses and so forth coming up, to be of the correct shape. Long strands here and there, thicker strands, so forth, a variation, not everything exactly the same. Start with your lighter colour, go into your darker colour, but sort of a medium dark at this stage because it's an underpainting, and then we'll come much darker colours later. Once again, please visit my site, billholcombart.etsy.com. You can order prints of my artworks. There are lots of them to choose from, and postage is free. And also like and subscribe so that you can be notified of future videos so you don't miss them. You can see lots of tips. Some of them are long tutorials, some of them are shorter ones like this. We even have some with just a few minutes that are showing various techniques that will help you make rapid progress in your watercolor painting. And it's all free. I mean, you can't beat free, can you? Come on, like and subscribe, do it. And then we've darkened up different areas here and there, and we've got a nice contrast going on between light and dark. We've got some uh, little reflective shadows coming into the water there from the turtles, and we'll soon be tackling a little bit of the area near the heron now, some of the nest area. Once again, that's a darker finish, and it shows a nice contrast against the light. So at the base, some of a nest area or various twigs and branches coming out there. And good thing there on that one is you don't have to worry about massive accuracy of shape, because you just do it enough that's convincing. And here we go now with lifting for the sun area. So your smaller brush, make sure there's no pigment residue remaining on it because it will color the paper. And so really wash it out good. Then dip it into some clear water and then do the round shape with the clear water where you want the sun and lift it with your tissue. And a tissue that doesn't break up because you don't want bits of tissue left on the paper. And you can also use the eraser again to get rid of little pencil marks that you don't need anymore. I did have some pencil marks indicating the sun, and I can use that eraser to get rid of those as well. Once again, a flat brush because we want accuracy and we want shape. So little ripples on the water make it much more convincing. As we get nearer, as always, the things like this would normally be darker and then lighter as you go off into the distance. So, a little bit of that going on. And when we have got this dry, we then can put some Spanish moss on the trees, just little indications of it. Just as I've said on a number of videos, just enough to tell a story. As you don't often have to meticulously do tons and tons of tiny detail in certain paintings, but if you do enough to tell a story, then it's sufficiently convincing. And if you labor it too much, it can be very distracting to the painting. You don't want your attention to be drawn to lots of detail here, detail there, detail there, detail. It can become a bit too much. So we're now at the stage where we can do the blue heron. And I would point out in advance here that, look, the beak is hard to do. It's tiny pointed at the end. And what I will have to do is shape that beak a little bit better later. I'll have to do a little bit of lifting and reshape the beak, you see. So don't worry about that. You might have the same issue, but you can correct it by that lifting technique with the clear water on it and just dab in and lift it, and then we'll shape that up even better later. And then well, for the wildlife, make sure you, as I say, know your subject. Study closely the shape of the bird and its different aspects, different features, so that when you add these to a landscape like this, misty river scene here, then you are accurate and it's therefore convincing. It's proven that you know your subject. We can use the scraping technique a little bit here for the neck. And for the main body, we can lay down our bluish wash, light one, as often the case at first, as an underwash, underpainting, and then go into the darker. Gradually darken those areas up. Then as it dries either naturally or with a hairdryer, then you can use a much smaller brush and start putting in various lines where the feathers would be and so forth to shape up the bird much more convincingly, showing light and dark and a few little ruffled feathers and strands coming out here and there, you know. So it's quite a convincing final result. And we're a long way through this video now. We're at 15 minutes through the video, and we've just got a couple of minutes to go, so we're getting very close to the end. And I think this is definitely a good painting for beginners in watercolor to tackle fairly early on. You know, it's a small size paper that we've been using, you know. Um, and if things don't go quite right, you know, so what? You know, it's just a piece of paper and a few paints. You know, it hasn't cost a fortune. Um, okay, it might be disheartening, but you learn by your mistakes. So don't worry if you make a few. That will say to you, well, I see what I did wrong, not quite right there, and therefore I can try to avoid that in the future. Um, so this is really a practice, you know. Yeah. And as you practice more and more, like anything, like in sport and so forth, you get better and better, and then you'll be ending up very quickly, I think, if you follow these tutorials of mine, with finished paintings that you're proud of, you love to display, and even ultimately, you know, you might start selling some of your artworks, which would be fantastic, help pay for some of your materials, etc. And then just neatening up that bird here and there, emphasizing the lights and the darks and so forth. And now we've finished. So here's a reveal, taking off that tape. Lots of people love this part because they like to see the tape coming off and hearing it coming off and so forth. And I think it helps frame the painting at the end. And here we are, finished painting. I hope that you've enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. Good to have your company, and we'll see you next time.